Let's get to the Arizona Cardinals and Larry Fitzgerald's Hall of Fame speech. And before I start with what he said in his Hall of Fame speech, I want to start with his thank you to Arizona sports fans because, look, Larry Fitzgerald was raised by a sports journalist, so it's no surprise that he's very well spoken and very well written. And I loved this full page ad he took out in the Arizona Republic thanking fans for his Hall of Fame career. Thank you, Arizona. People have asked me countless times what it felt like to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The truth is, it was one of the greatest honors of my life. But this really isn't a Hall of Fame story, it's a thank you letter. I arrived in Arizona as a 20-year-old kid who didn't know a single person. I had no idea this desert would become the place that would shape me into the man I am today. The day I landed was the same day the nation learned Pat Tillman had lost his life. Pat is one of America's great heroes. I stepped off the plane into a state where its people were carrying real grief, and something inside me grew quiet. I started paying attention. You learn quickly what loyalty looks like when it isn't just a word. For the next 17 seasons, I quietly measured myself against the standard Pat Tillman set. I'm still not sure I ever lived up to it. Somewhere along the way, Arizona stopped being the place where I lived and became the place where I was from. It happened through 1,000 ordinary moments until one day I realized this was simply home. Not because I was a Hall of Famer, not because I was a wide receiver, just because the people of this state allowed me to be Larry. You don't fall in love with a place because of its stadiums. You fall in love on a quiet morning's hike, on a quiet morning hiking Camelback Mountain. On crisp fall afternoons, walking a golf course, during summers in Flagstaff, standing among the red rocks of Sedona that remind you just how small you are in the best possible way. When I stopped playing football, I walked away quietly. I'm known for my Irish goodbyes. Arizona even gave me that. Yet you kept showing up for me anyway, especially through the work of my foundation. Your support was never conditional. You never asked me to be anything other than myself, and somehow that was always enough. Arizona gave a kid from Minneapolis something he didn't even know he was searching for: belonging. And that sense of belonging changed me. After a while, you weren't cheering for a wide receiver anymore. You were cheering for one of your own. So this isn't really a story about 17 seasons in a Cardinals uniform or a bronze bust in Canton. It's a story of a young man who was welcomed by a state that owed him nothing and gave him everything. Thank you, Arizona. Thank you for letting a kid from somewhere else become one of your own. Thank you for embracing not just the player, but the man. You gave me far more than a career. You gave me friendships that will last a lifetime. You gave me purpose beyond football. You gave me a place where my children will always know they belong. Most of all, you gave me a home. With love and gratitude, Larry Fitzgerald. I mean, just reading that alone, just reading that alone speaks volumes to who Larry Fitzgerald was as a person and as a player. And here's what I'll say about Larry Fitzgerald. He is the best athlete in Arizona sports history. He stayed with the Cardinals his entire career and embodied professionalism in a way that very few athletes in professional sports have ever been able to do it. Even when the Cardinals were down, he could have asked for trades, and honestly, we don't know if he did or not. But it doesn't seem like it, and I think Larry would be honest if he had. Larry was a guy who wanted to be in Arizona his whole career. Larry was a guy like many people who go to Arizona. He was a transplant, but he found a home. He found a place that he could call home. Even when Larry had a Hall of Fame quarterback or close to that, Larry always made the playoffs. And he consistently made plays on the biggest stage. I don't have to remind you, or I shouldn't have to remind you, of what he did in 2008 on the way to the Super Bowl. I shouldn't have to remind you about one of the greatest games ever played when Larry Fitzgerald put Arizona on his back to beat the Green Bay Packers against Aaron Rodgers to make it to the NFC Conference Championship game. When the lights were the brightest, Larry made his biggest plays against the Packers, against the Steelers, against the Panthers, against the Eagles, against the Falcons. That's who Larry was. He also still continued to ball out even when Max Hall and Kevin Kolb were guys throwing him passes. What's also great about Larry is that he was himself. He's a quirky guy. He still hasn't said the word retirement. If you watched his or listen to his interview on Pardon My Take, he refuses to say that he retired. He didn't go out with he didn't go out with a retirement journey. He didn't go out um with a last dance. He went away quietly. He just disappeared in 2020. We didn't know where he was. Well, all we knew is that he wasn't playing football. And I'm sure Larry kind of enjoyed giving the NFL an Irish goodbye. Larry's also inspirational for not just what he did on the field, but how he's dealt with loss in his life off the field. When he was at Pittsburgh, he had to deal with the loss of his mom and teammate. And just months ago, Larry Fitzgerald Sr. passed away. And so neither of his parents were there for what should have been the greatest day of Larry Fitzgerald Jr.'s life. I can't possibly imagine what the emotions that he felt over the past few months with it being announced he was getting into the Hall of Fame, which obviously was going to happen. That was a no-brainer. But then to losing his father, to having both of his parents not there for a day that he said he never even thought it was possible, but probably a day he dreamt of for most of his football life was putting on a gold jacket, being one of the best in the sport, being one of the best wide receivers of all time. Yes, he's second in yards, he's second in receptions, and he's sixth in touchdowns in NFL history. But it's way more than just the stats, because he represented Arizona and the Cardinals organization as well, and the state of Arizona, as well as any professional athlete has in the history of Arizona sports. All right, now let's have some fun. What did I think of Larry Fitzgerald's bust? I give it a C+. I don't look, I'm no artist, but it should be easier to make these bronze busts than it is. I don't know if we just need to create an AI machine that can make a lifelike bust, but time and time again for these athletes, these these statues and busts that they make look very, very poor compared to what the actual athlete looks like. Now, part of that is that some of these bronze busts are made after players what they look like at the beginning of their career, and not at the end, not when they're standing up there. So that there is a difference there, but I just think as a society, making more realistic bronze busts is something that we should be able to have accomplished at this point, but still haven't been able to do. I also think, and maybe he's the only guy in NFL history that deserves this, but I do think that there should be a bronze bust made of his butt. Because, man, that is one of the thickest players in NFL history, maybe in the history of the world. So, Larry Fitzgerald, Hall of Fame player, Hall of Fame butt. All right, let's get to some current NFL. Sorry. Let's get to some current NFL Arizona Cardinals news, and that's Carson Beck's Hall of Fame game. Carson Beck went 15 of 19, had a touchdown pass, had some great deep balls. Carson Beck looked exactly, I think, met expectations or slightly exceeded expectations of what I thought he was going to do in the Hall of Fame game. Look, he's going against a defense that has been together for a week. He's going against a defense, and I think it was kind of talked about on the broadcast where both of these defensive coordinators and coaches were like, hey, we're just going to play base. And so as far as reading defenses, Carson, they were definitely giving Carson an easy pre-test. They weren't giving him the final exam like Carson's going to see on a week in and a week out basis in the NFL. He was definitely taking an easier quiz than what the NFL game is going to look like. We also didn't see him with any of the ones, so we don't know what his chemistry would even look like if he was playing with Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., Mike Wilson. But he did have some great passes, and he showed why he was a projected first round pick at one point in his college career. Why the Cardinals were so high on drafting him with the first pick in the third round. Carson is a guy that I think can be an NFL starting quarterback one day. I don't know if I'll say he's ever going to break into the top 10, heck, even the top 15, but I think there's a good chance, especially with the amount of football Carson's played in college, that he can come in, he can learn an NFL system, and he can be an average NFL quarterback pretty quickly. He doesn't have the Baker Mayfield, I can throw it 70 yards arm strength, but he has good arm strength. He showcased that in college. And I think the more removed we get from that elbow injury he suffered back at Georgia, the stronger his arm is going to look even now. Like, I think his arm can still has a little bit of a ways to go to get back to being as strong as it can possibly be. I honestly thought his best pass was his last pass that ended up being an incompletion on a fourth down in the second half. I mean, he showed no signs of lacking aggression. He threw it deep down the field. The receiver got both hands on it and just wasn't able to make a play. And obviously, he had a couple other deep balls to 86 who came down with them as well. The receiver had quite a bit of separation, but on that last pass and on a couple of the other passes, like the touchdown pass to the back, he put that right on the money low where the back could get it and kind of slide into the end zone underneath the Panthers players. And then he had one over the middle as well. That was a beautifully placed ball as well. So Carson Beck definitely impressed, but he's going to have to play a whole heck of a lot better for me to want to see him start in September. There's still a long ways to go. But unfortunately for the Cardinals, reports are right now is that Jacoby Brissett hasn't been playing very well in practice so far. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we see Carson Beck as Arizona's starting quarterback earlier than we thought. To end the podcast and to kind of cap off my tribute to Larry Fitzgerald, I'm going to give a top 5 list of Valley Sports Hall of Famers. Here are the top 5 Valley Sports Hall of Famers. 1, Larry Fitzgerald. 2, Steve Nash. 3, Randy Johnson. 4, Luis Gonzalez. You can debate the top 4, but that's a clear top 4, and that is the Mount Rushmore of Arizona sports. You can argue Barkley. You can argue Kurt Warner potentially. You could argue Amari Stoudemire, who is a personal favorite of mine. One day Devin Booker will easily be on that list. Hopefully Corbin Carroll's on that list. And one day Carson Beck could be on that list. Or Jeremiah Love. Or Marvin Harrison Jr. Anquan Bolden's a guy that maybe should get a little bit of consideration as well. For my 5th spot, I'm going with Amari Stoudemire because the Nash and Stoudemire pick and roll is what made me fall in love with basketball. It's going to be different for everyone. If you grew up in the 90s, you'll probably say Barkley's in that 5th spot. If you're, a young kid watching this, if you're 12 years old watching this, you might not understand. Booker's not yet in the Hall of Fame. He will be. And when he is, he might be 1. But it's going to come down to him and Fitz. Fitz is number 1. Nash is number 2. Randy's number 3. Gonzo's number 4. To me, Stoudemire's number 5 because I'm just going off of personal preference. So there you have it. The top 5 Valley Sports Hall of Famers from yours truly, Kevin Humphreys. Thank you guys so much for watching this podcast. I hope you'll like and subscribe to this video for more Arizona sports content. And I will see you next time. Go Diamondbacks. Go Cardinals. Go Suns.